Now it's time to start working on the lid or the roof of the acorn. And as you saw in the cutting guide, there are there are 4 sections to the lid. The first section is made from 2 1-inch wide strips of medium weight chipboard. Cut them 12 inches. I've already cut this one off a little bit. And then we're going to mark and do some deep scoring at 1 1/4 inches so that we have 17 sections that make that first section up. Now, if it turns out that you cut all the way through, don't worry. It won't be a problem to put them together. And then I have up here laid out for when we're ready the second section, which is 1.5 inch tall trapezoids. The third section, which is 1 1/8 inch tall trapezoids. The dimensions again are in the cutting guide. And then a 3 1/4 inch circle, which we'll talk about this hole when we get to it. So I'm going to do my deep scoring at 1 1/4 inch until I get 17 pieces. They're going to still be connected, obviously, and then I'll be back to work on the next step. Now we're ready to join these into a circle, and I'm just going to give a gentle bend on each one of these scores that I made, and on both sides here. And then I've cut a couple of cardstock joining strips that are cut 1 3/8 inch wide, and then they're 12 inches long. We probably won't need the whole length. And then these have been scored at 3/8 of an inch. So what we're going to do is put these on the non-scored side of these strips and leave a little extra so that we can join the two. Leave this tape on to begin with, and we'll make this into a circle. Give this some burnishing before we join. It's easier to do when it's flat. And then we'll just kind of give these a little bend again. And come around and join, and just do a butt join here at the end. And then flip that over and give that a little burnish. Okay, so that's the first section of our lid made. And then what we want to do is this strip of cardstock with a score tape here is going to join the next section on, and what we want to do is cut out, using the markings here, the divisions here, little wedges, and you can either remove the backing or leave it on and take it all off at the end. And just go around making those little V cuts. That's what you're going to do at each intersection. So I'm going to proceed around and do that, and then we'll be back to work on the next section. Now I've cut all the notches for the joining on the first ring, so I'm going to just put that aside, and let's start working on the second section. And that is the bigger trapezoids. These are 1.5 inches tall, and what you'll notice is that in each section the base of the trapezoid is equal to the dimension on the top of the previous ring. So because these sections on the first ring were 1¼ inch wide. That's why the base of this, the second section's trapezoids are 1¼ inch wide. So what we'll do is just use some small cardstock joining strips to join all of these together, edge to edge, all the way around, and then we'll be back. So you can see I've got all of my larger trapezoids joined together. Before I make it into a round, I'm going to do a couple of things. I'm going to burnish each one of these joins coming across here. And then on the top, the narrower edge, I'm going to add some little joining strips. These are cut about 7/8 of an inch or so, and they're just going to go centered on the inside of each one of these strips so that we can join the next row together. So I'll do that all the way across, put those on, and then join this in the round. Now we have our second section joined into a ring with all of its little tabs on the top, and we'll just put that aside. Now for the third section, these are the pieces that are 1 1/8 inch tall. Their base is 1 inch and their top is 5/8 of an inch. And we're just going to join these into a ring. Don't add any tabs at either the top or the bottom. So now we have section 3 finished and all burnished on the inside. We'll put that aside for a second. And this is the top section, section 4, which is a 3 1/4 inch circle. And from the center of that, I have cut a hole that is 1 inch wide and 1½ inches tall. 1 inch wide by 1½ inch tall, and just center that in the circle. And then to join, the circle is going to get joined to this section. And what we want to do, you could either make little tabs going all the way around, but I thought it might be easier just to cut a circle and cut some little wedges out of it. So that's what I've done here. And this is a cardstock circle that I put some score tape on the back of, and I cut it, the outside ring here is 4 inches in diameter, which would be a 2 inch radius to draw it. And then just as a guideline, I don't think you need to have the 3 1/4, which is the width of this circle. And then the inside, the diameter is 2½ which of course the radius would be 1 1/4. So what we're going to do here is just remove the score tape backing. And then center the cardstock as best that you can. It's got about a 3/8 of an inch overlap all the way around. It's not super critical, but do the best you can and just get that in there. And then when you burnish, remember just to burnish that inside because we've removed the tape backing from here. Now we need to cut some little wedges out of this piece, and I'm just going to use the edge of the cardstock just to kind of crease that so that it will be more inclined to go down the slope of section 3 here. And probably the easiest way to mark for this is to just kind of lay this on the top and make little tick marks going around the edge of the cardstock, and then you can come in and cut out little wedges. So now I have all the little wedges cut out of the circle portion, and I'm going to connect it to section 3. I'm just going to bend these down kind of out of the way to begin with so they don't get stuck prematurely. Okay, that's pretty good. Just kind of giving it a little press. You could put a, I've just got a Distress ink pad here that I'm resting the center circle on, and then just kind of pushing down, and now I can go behind here and put all of the tabs on, and then come back and burnish. That circle is just a little bit smaller in my case than the diameter of ring number 3. It doesn't matter because all this will be covered up when we put the patterned paper on. And now, just holding the edge up, I'm going to burnish around that edge. Now it's a matter of just adding the other sections, removing the tabs and putting on section 2, and then the bottom section, section 4. So I'll do that and then I'll be back. Things should line up fairly well for you, but all of this is going to be covered with pattern paper, like little petals, so that any kind of odd pieces or things that don't meet up exactly, that won't be a problem. And then of course make sure you burnish all the joins. So now we have our 4 sections together, and to give a little more stability to this bottom edge, we're going to cut a piece that will fit inside and give some support to it. So just taking a piece of chipboard that is big enough to draw this circle. I think I can come into this corner. Let's see here. Yeah, probably over here. And I'm just going to trace around, and then when I go to cut it, I'll make sure I cut 1/16 inch inside of my drawn line to allow for the thickness of the chipboard. Obviously, if your chipboard is a little bit different weight, you would just make allowances for that. Also, to make sure that you get things lined up right, in case there's some kind of difference, I just like to come in here and put an X on one of the sections, and then as I put it down here, I'm just going to make an X by that section on the piece of chipboard so that I can make sure I get them lined up correctly. So I'm going to trace that out, and then I'll be back to show you what's next. I've completed the tracing of the top here, and I also made some little tick marks at each intersection as I went along. And now I'm just going to extend those intersections in, because they'll help me know where to line up my ruler to make each section straight. So I'm just coming in here and extending those in, about 1/8 of an
Now
inch
it's
or
time
so,
to add pattern paper to the roof.
just so that I'll be able to see
I've
them
decided
easily.
to use this peachy colored paper.
And
It's
now
called
you could either go ahead and
spellbound.
draw the line that you
And
want to.
you can use any punch
that
you want
as your
and
cutting
layer
line,
them any way you
or
want.
you could
I
just
happen
eyeball
to
the
be
width
using
of
the
your
larger petal
chipboard
from
and go
this
ahead and cut that
Fiskars
all around.
punch. I think
Either
it's,
way, just cut. So cut
the extra
width of your
large flower
chipboard
petals.
inside
I'm
of
not
this line.
positive, but it has a big one and a little one. And the big one,
And when I say the width of the
petals
chipboard,
measure about
the width of the chipboard plus maybe just
an
a
inch and a
tiny bit
half
more, because
from
remember
top to
when you
bottom
drew this
and
line,
an inch across.
it
And I'm just going to
was
go
on
around
the
and shingle
outside
this
of
and get
the
up to
chipboard.
the top.
So you'll
I may
want to
decide
allow
to
for the
use the
width of the
smaller
line
one
as
when I
well.
get near the top.
Once you
I will
have
just have to kind of
this
see.
piece
So
of
I'm just
chipboard
going
cut
to
out, I want
I've cut
you
them
to
out
put it
and
on your
I've inked
cutting
the
mat
edges, and I'm just going to
and
use
find a
some
way to
wet glue, I think,
center it
to
so
stick them
that you
on
can get
and move my
two
way,
lines
starting from the
that can
bottom,
help you
overlapping
find
the edge down
the
here a little bit,
approximate
and moving
center
up to the
of
top.
the object, which is kind of a circle with 17 sides. So I'm just kind of
So here's the
eyeballing it
completed
here.
lid
I've got it
with
pretty
all
well
of the
left to right, and
shingles on
it's
it.
about seven
Be
inches,
ready to go on top
maybe a little
of the
bit
house.
less than 7 inches each way. And so I'm just kind of going between 3.5 each way. And now I've got it so that these two lines on my mat are going to help me find the center of this, so I can come and mark one line this way and one line this way. So now we only want to have about 3/8 of an inch of a rim or so there. So let's see about what we want to have for the diameter of this circle, or the radius of this circle. I'm thinking about 3 inches. Let's try that and see how that works. So I'm just using my mat to open my compass to 3 inches. And I'll just scribe a circle around here and see how that is. It won't be exactly perfectly centered, but it should be pretty good, and I think that will work. So let's use that, and we'll cut this circle out. Okay. And so when we go to fit this in, let's find here's my X that I made. Now this X that's on the chipboard should go to the inside, and then it should fit. You might want to just take a piece of temporary tape. I just used some blue painter's tape and just kind of attach it. Just work your way around and see if it's going to fit inside, or if there's any place that you need to do a little bit of trimming. And I can see that I have one place over here that I need to do a little trimming, so I'll do that and then we'll be back. Once you have a nice fit to this piece, go ahead and run a bead of glue along the inside and then set it aside to dry. Now it's time to make the stem, which also is going to act like a little chimney. So I've cut out the pieces as described in the cutting guide. I have 2 pieces that are 1 1/2 by 2 inches, 2 pieces that are 3/4 inch by 2 inches, and 1 piece that is 7/8 inch by 1 1/2. And I've put some light blue paper, and that's going to go on the inside. because after it dries, we're going to glue these pieces together. We're going to wrap the outside with some pattern paper, and this is the pattern paper that I've chosen. So the construction we're going to use here is to add a bead of glue along, taking one of the 1 1/2 inch by 2 inch pieces, just running a bead of glue along the 2 vertical edges there, adding the side pieces. Again, the solid cardstock is going on the inside. We'll do that on both sides here. And then add a bead of glue on these 2 edges. Then add our last larger side, again with the solid cardstock on the inside. Just making sure everything is pretty square here. And then we'll add a bead of glue on one of the bottom edges. And put our bottom on. Again, the blue paper, solid cardstock is going towards the inside. And we'll just allow that to set up. While that's setting up, I'm going to add some score tape to our pattern paper, and I'm going to put a strip along both the top edge and the bottom edge. And then one of the side edges. And then I think our glue is set up enough to work with over here. What we want to do is put score tape on either side of the corners. That'll make sure that the paper stays nice and well wrapped as it goes around the chimney. Just here at the top opening on these long sides, let's just add another little strip. I don't think we need to do it on the short sides. Okay. Make sure those are burnished on. And now we can wrap. And what we want to do is this piece that I cut this piece 2.5 inches by 5 1/4, and I want the overhang, remember this is about 2 inches, a little bit more tall. We want the overhang to go on the open end. So I'm just starting this at one end here, and I'm trying to see if I can watch out for my stripes a little bit. Get that on there. Then we'll just wrap this around. Now let's just burnish here a little bit. Then we're going to wrap this to the inside just by making some little cuts on the corners. We can wrap it in nicely. Now I can come back and go over the edge, hit them with the bone folder a little bit first just to make a nice crease there. And then continue wrapping them to the inside. Then you'll want to just take your bone folder and neaten up all the corners and edges. If you want to do a little inking, I have some shabby shutters here, I think. Just kind of hit these corners a little bit. So now we have our little stem slash chimney. Now that is going to fit inside of this slot that we made here. Might be a little bit snug. If it's a little bit snug, we can come back and trim it off. Mine is a little bit snug top to bottom, I think because of the extra layer of paper. So I'm just going to trim a little bit off of one end of this hole here. So I trimmed a sliver off of the end of this hole, and now the chimney can fit in here. What I want to do is have it at an angle, and in order to make that angle, what I want to do is measure up on one of the long sides. We'll measure up 1 inch, and this is from the bottom. And on the other long side, we'll measure up 5/8 of an inch. Just make a line there. And then we'll put a cardstock joining strip on that line. We can hold it back about 1/16 of an inch, I would say, from that line, underneath that line. So cut a couple of strips here. So I've got, this strip is a little bit less than 5/8 from the bottom, and this one is going to be a little bit less than 1 inch from the bottom. Then we'll go ahead and remove those strips there. So now the chimney is ready to go inside. One thing we want to do before we put the chimney in, I just think it'd be easier to do it before rather than after, is to cut a piece of either the pattern paper you're going to use for the shingles on the roof, or I'm just using a piece of cardstock that coordinates with those the paper I'm using for the shingles. And I just want to cut a piece so that I've got about 3/8 or a half an inch around the hole here, so that if the shingles don't come exactly up to the chimney, you won't see any of the chipboard. So I've cut this piece, about 2 inches by 2.5, and then I cut that central opening out of here, which is a little bit longer than 1.5, about a 1/16 of an inch longer than 1.5, and 1 inch wide. And I've just backed that with some score tape. That on there, and then we'll put the chimney in from the bottom so that we can engage these 2 pieces of joining strips. And give that burnish. Now that we have the chimney / stem in place, if the optional step is to finish off this inside a little bit with a 6-inch piece of chipboard, which will just fit inside here because this circle here, as you recall, is 6 inches. Now before you put some glue on here, I suggest you dry fit it to get an idea of where it will fall. It's going to come, in order to be square in here, somewhere in this, about halfway in between this second section. So if you just put it in here, dry fit it, and it will fit in, you can kind of see, get an eyeball of where that needs to go, and before you put it in with glue on. Now this is a little fussy, and it just kind of finishes things off. It does give the inside box potentially something to rest on and just look a little neater in there, but you don't need to do this. So I can see that it comes up about a half an inch or so along these lines here. So I'm going to pull it out. I'm going to put glue around the edge basically of this. I think you can see that I made myself a little handle out of some blue tape just to help me position it in there. And now I'm just putting some pressure on it so that the glue can set up. And then we'll be ready to add the shingles to the roof. Now it's time to add pattern paper to the roof, and I've decided to use this peachy colored paper. It's called Spellbound, and you could use any punch that you want and layer them any way you want. I just happen to be using the larger petal from this Fiskars punch. I think it's the extra large flower petals. I'm not positive, but it has a big one and a little one. And the big one, the petals measure about
an inch and a half from top to bottom and an inch across. And I'm just going to go around and shingle this and get up to the top. I may decide to use the smaller one when I get near the top. We'll just have to kind of see. So I'm just going to, I've cut them out and I've inked the edges, and I'm just going to use some wet glue, I think, to stick them on and move my way starting from the bottom, overlapping the edge down here a little bit, and moving up to the top. So here's the completed lid with all of the shingles on it, and it will be ready to go on top of the house.